So this is our second video on rules of angles. Make sure that if you haven't already to watch the first video. What we're going to look at today is our next set of rules regarding angles, and we're going to first start out by looking at the fact that opposite angles are the same, and this occurs when we have two lines that intersect. So I have two lines here that intersect, and the angles that are formed, the opposite angles are the same. So if this was A degrees, this would also be A degrees because these two angles are opposite, and this would also apply to these two angles here being the same size. Okay, and as you become more comfortable with rules of angles, you'll learn that certain questions you can combine different rules to find missing values. Okay, so just to look at an example of this nature and the type of questions, very basic questions that you might come across in an exam, is if we were asked to find this angle x here. So we have again two lines that intersect, and you should recognize that these two angles are opposite angles. Therefore x is just 45 degrees, so not a great deal of working out will be involved in that type of basic question. The second example, a wee bit trickier. Okay, so we've got three missing angles to work out, A, B and C. There's a couple of ways to go about doing this. I might actually go about working out B first using this rule, because if I know that this is 87 degrees, then B must also be 87 degrees. Okay, and this is where we look at, again, I'm just going to put this in here for the sake of visualizing it in my diagram. And this is where we're also going to look at combining some of the other rules. So if you remember in the previous video, we looked at angles on a flat line adding to 180 degrees. So that means that at angle A and the 87 degrees on the bottom must add to 180 degrees in total. So therefore A would be 93 degrees, and how I worked out that was by simply taking 87 away from 180 to give me 93 degrees. Now if I know that A is 93 degrees, because A and C are opposite angles, then C is also 93 degrees. So in that case we've combined two of our rules. Again, you could have went about working out A first, then B and C, but it's totally up to yourself, and as you become more confident with these, you'll decide what way you prefer to do it. Moving on from this, our next rule is that corresponding angles are the same. So what I'm going to do in this diagram is I'm going to mark the corresponding angles and explain what that means. So if we have a pair of parallel lines intersected by another straight line, we have what's called corresponding angles formed, both on the top here and on the bottom here. Okay, so if I was to look at the angle that is corresponding to A, the angle that is corresponding to A is the same angle that will be formed up here. So this is the corresponding angle, as in it's in the same place. Okay. The angle that is corresponding to B is this one here. Okay. And you can see by looking at it, those angles are the same. A is an acute angle. A is also an acute angle down here, and both these B's are also acute. All right. The angle that is corresponding to C up here is this angle in here, and the angle that is corresponding to D is this angle here. Okay, so just to look at some of the questions you might be asked of that nature. Say I was asked to find this missing angle A. So A is corresponding to this 110 degree angle, so therefore A equals 110 degrees. Now, say we get asked to work out angles B, C, and D. Okay, and I'll just mark these in here for the sake of the question. Say these were given to us as B, C, and D. There's nothing else marked down here, but we can use our other rules to help us work this out, such as, okay, so the last rule we learned was that opposite angles are the same here. And if we just consider the bottom part of this diagram, okay, 110 degrees, opposite from that is this angle here, so that's also 110 degrees. Using the other rule as well, and again these aren't actually any of the answers yet, we're just working out the missing angles on the bottom. The angle to the right of the 110 degrees, they both lie on a flat line, so therefore this is 70, because 110 and 70 gives me 180 degrees, and this is also 70 because it's opposite to that other 70-degree angle. Now, if I want to work out using corresponding angles, B here is also 70 degrees. C here is corresponding to this 110. And D here is corresponding to this 70 degrees. So I've used the corresponding angles to work out the missing values up here. Okay. So that's corresponding angles. Basically, whatever angle you're working with, whether it's top or bottom, corresponds to the same angle formed by the intersecting line on either the top or bottom there also. The next rule is alternate angles. So on this diagram, I'm going to mark what the alternate angles are from A, B, C, and D. And alternate angles are also the same. So A is this angle here, and the alternate angle up here to this is here. Okay, sometimes people use this idea of a Z shape. I'm just going to draw it on here to help you remember. So the two angles formed within the Z are alternate to each other. Okay, B is this angle here, and the alternate angle to B is up here. C is this angle here, and D is this angle in here. So they're all alternate. So A and A are both the same and they're alternate angles. B and B are both the same size and they're alternate angles. C and C are alternate, and D are alternate. And now we'll just look at some of the types of questions we might be asked. So A, and again using our Z shape. There's A and A, so A equals 75 degrees. B, using that Z shape again, is 105 degrees. You could use the Z shape that way. All right. The last rule we're going to look at is just internal angles. So internal angles is the angles formed inside here, okay, and they would add to 180 degrees, because another way of thinking that is this angle A is using our rule of corresponding angles. A is corresponding to this angle up here, and those two angles are on a flat line from each other, okay, the 120 degrees and the one above it, okay, so therefore A must be 60 degrees. So another way of thinking that is the two angles, 120 and A on the inside, two angles on the inside will always add to 180 degrees, okay. So those are the rules that we're learning today. I'll put some questions up to practice, and anything you're unsure about, just ask.